In November of 2023, the Swell Pod took a 10-day journey across 5 states, traveling 3,580 miles with one challenge in mind.
And that challenge was to interview 100 pleasantly rebellious humans to uncover deep truths about what it takes to create something that has never existed before, challenge the status quo, maybe even change the world.
This is the Kiln Road Trip, created and produced by the Swell Pod.
In partnership with Kiln, Moterra Camper Vans, and sponsored by Taurus.
I'm Spencer McKeown.
And I'm Josh Taylor, and together we're the co-hosts of the Swell Pod and your guides on the Kiln Road Trip. Follow along on the journey.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Swell Pod on social media, and subscribe to your YouTube channel at, you guessed it, the Swell Pod.
This is interview 56 of the Kiln Road Trip, and today we're at Kiln Boulder in Colorado talking with Greg Shanken. Greg is the founder and CEO of Gloss, a web development and digital marketing agency serving the mental health space with a specialty serving clients in the psychedelic ecosystem based on founder Greg Shanken's personal healing journey, nonprofit, and advocacy work. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoy.
So I'm Greg Shanken. I live in Boulder, Colorado, which is a great place to live. And I own a web development and digital marketing agency called Gloss. And a big change that we've had over the past year is really focusing in on the mental health niche and specifically in the psychedelic healing space.
Oh, interesting.
And that has come from my own journey in healing lifelong depression. And I've tried many different ways of healing, and really I've found the most effective way for me has been, well, really a combination of psychedelic healing and a type of therapy called internal family systems or parts therapy. And that's really just ignited my passion to serve this space with what I do.
What is the, if you don't mind me asking, what is the psychedelic healing that you found helpful?
Sure.
If you can tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. It's been a combination. It started with microdosing mushrooms. And that actually helped me get off prescription meds that I had been on, specifically SSRI medication that for me, I found very numbing. I wasn't feeling a lot of emotion in my life. And I always say for me, because I never want to condemn prescription meds that might be helpful for others. I decided they were no longer serving me.
Yeah. And
so microdosing mushrooms helped me kind of get off those meds in a gentle way, if you will. And that led up to my first ayahuasca retreat, which I did in January of 2022.
Where did you do that?
I did that in California.
Okay.
So it was in the United States. And there are many places to do that in the US. And that really just opened my eyes to really the whole world of psychedelic healing and kind of how deep you can go with it. I then actually went to 2 more retreats. And that was 2022. And all of that was really helpful. And actually that put me on the path of really focusing my business in this space. So I really started getting embedded in the space. I became an ambassador for Proposition 122, which legalized mushrooms and other psychedelic medicines in Colorado. And then just a little bit more about that is 2023, I started with ketamine therapy, which is another psychedelic medicine, which is fully legal all over the US. And that's been incredibly effective for me as well.
That's amazing. Can I, before we dive into, I think your digital marketing agency, I would love to just, so let's say going into that first ayahuasca retreat and kind of this journey that you've been on, like, was there hesitancy, or were you pretty open to what you might find? Like, was it something that you kind of had a little bit of back and forth internally trying to decide if you really wanted to try that route, or help me understand what that was like for you?
Sure. So yeah, it was, I mean, there was definitely some fear going off the meds that I was on, even though I, as mentioned, kind of concluded they were no longer serving me, but I had been on them for so long, and they actually did help with depression symptoms. So, but what I discovered was they weren't really healing the underlying problems. And that's what psychedelic healing can do, is just really open you up at a very deep level. So there was definitely some fear going in, but I had done a lot of research. So I went into that first retreat just kind of feeling nervous but excited.
And what did you come out of that first experience with? Like, how did that change things for you?
Yes. Well, what it did was it really showed me the full range of emotion that had been kind of tamped down by the medication I was on. So the first night was actually one of the most buoyant, jubilant, happy experiences I've ever had, to the point where I concluded, wow, this is really fun. But one of the things about ayahuasca is that every experience is different. And I mentioned that because the next night was the most terrifying experience I've ever had. I really felt like I was never coming out of it. And as scary and terrifying as that was, what I took from it is, like I said, it really just showed me at a very visceral level kind of the emotions, both on the high and the low, range that had been, kind of dampened by the meds I was on.
Yeah,
so.
It's just this massive expansion of feeling, and
yes, exactly.
and so that was such a, like, I guess this journey that you've been on. You've shifted your digital marketing agency to focus on those types of companies and initiatives, and working with those groups, and so, like, that's kind of what you're really looking for, correct?
Yes, exactly. So it kind of happened in two ways. One is just really getting embedded in the, I call it an ecosystem, getting involved in advocacy efforts, as I mentioned. I also founded two nonprofits in the space. One is the Psychedelic Business Association, which is kind of similar to a chamber of commerce, helping businesses with a lot of the challenges they face in this particular space. And the other one is called the Colorado Psychedelic Society, which is more for individuals looking for community. So I did that really because I was feeling so much passion and really gratitude that I had found these healing modalities for myself. And then in parallel with that, with my agency, just really started focusing our efforts more into, tapping into, again, I call it an ecosystem of, businesses. A lot of it is therapists that are now layering in psychedelic healing. And then a lot of it are folks that are really changing careers because they've had similar experiences to mine, just really eye-opening and wanting to, lean into the space. And so, those are some of the efforts that kind of brought me to this point.
Interesting. Pretty unique experience. Tell me just a little bit, and we'll maybe go revisit, how you are helping those, pivot your agency toward that, I suppose, target market and those areas. But how did you why did you go into agency work in the first place? Like, what was your background leading up to that, and what type of work were you doing before you pivoted?
Yeah, so I've always been involved in technology in some way, shape, or form. In my younger years, I was in sales and marketing for various tech companies in the enterprise space. I did decide I wanted to strike out on my own and follow the entrepreneurial path, and started in the space just doing lead generation for businesses, but it really didn't it didn't align us, and I didn't feel passionate. It was just kind of a lot of buying lots of traffic and kind of sending it to various places, and it's kind of this other ecosystem that very transactional. That's really the best way to put it. And so I wanted something where we could really work closely with clients and understand their problems and help them solve those problems. So that led me into the agency world.
That's great. And how have you pivoted? What type of challenges are you facing in trying to target this new area that you're trying to go into?
Yeah. So really, one of the challenges is legalization. So really, like mushrooms, for example, are only legal or decriminalized, and there's kind of it's a gray area between what those two words mean. In Oregon and Colorado, however, their legislation is now in various stages in like 12 or 13 other states. So that's one challenge. And it's a small but emerging ecosystem. So I know it's going to grow just in the way that cannabis has grown, even though actually they're very different. So it's kind of the belief that this is growing, and I'm seeing that it's growing. And that's also why I'm heavily involved in advocacy efforts, because I'm wanting to help it grow from that perspective. So then there actually is a larger market. However, it's been really rewarding because it's something I'm so passionate about, as I shared. I mean, it's so near and dear to my heart that and that was a passion that was absent in really until I went through this journey.
It's like all this purpose just like filled into the work that you're doing. It's very interesting. I'm wondering then, so as it relates to your nonprofits that you founded, so is that a lot of advocacy both in Colorado and also trying to expand that outside of Colorado as well? Help me understand the I guess the purpose and the mission of your nonprofits.
Yeah, so the Psychedelic Business Association, or PBA for short, really at this point is focused on helping businesses in Colorado and Oregon, the two legal states. And really Colorado is still a year out from opening healing centers. That's really the next step. That's what this legislation, well, part of what it allowed. In Oregon, there are healing centers that are open, but it's incredibly hard for them to get insurance, for example. So some of the topics we deal with are fairly dry, but they can't get insurance, or the policies they're getting are really not going to cover them. And that's because the insurance companies don't really understand this yet. So we're kind of working with underwriters to help educate them. Businesses in this space, similar to cannabis companies, have to file tax returns in a certain way because it's still federally illegal. So all cannabis businesses have to file a certain form because they're declaring income that is really from a activity that's federally illegal. So it's kind of helping them with those types of services as this, and then as other states become legal, it'll really be just rinse and repeat. Well, subject to state laws, which also throw in other wrenches in the game. So it's interesting to see how the growth of this new industry or ecosystem, intersects with capitalism and just kind of the framework that we have now for regular businesses, but it's just very unique in many ways.
We're having to work on these transformational. These are necessary things you have to do, right, to be able to achieve that purpose that you've set out to, right?
What do you hope? What do you hope for the future then, like 5-10 years down the road? What do you hope to see?
Well, obviously, I want to see the legalization continue to grow, and I'll kind of steal what I've heard other folks say. Like we want psychedelics to be boring. So right now it's kind of like, oh, it's cool, it's sexy, it's interesting, because of all the stuff from the 60s and, kind of all the wacky things that people think about psychedelics. And that's all fine and good. Nothing wrong with that. But when I say we want it to be boring, like we want it to be like any other healing modality.
Yeah, like standard.
And we just want psychedelics to be part of a greater, solution set. So it doesn't mean that psychedelics is the only way. It certainly is not the only way, but it should be part of the consideration set if you're seeking healing. And it's just, I can go this route. I could try therapy. I can try traditional prescription meds, or I can go in the route of psychedelic healing. So really hoping that it just becomes an everyday part of our society.
Yeah.
So it can help. So it can heal the most amount of people that can gain benefit from doing so.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting scenario trying to get the word psychedelic to be boring.
I was thinking the same thing. It's almost like
it's not a very boring word. It's like the opposite, right? But it might be a nice tagline.
Yeah.
Let's make it boring. Let's make
psychedelics boring. So what role does Kiln play for you and your journey, both, with your digital marketing agency and the nonprofits and the work that you're doing?
So before COVID, I was in a different co-working space, a good one. And then everything closed down for COVID and I went back to work at home like many folks. And then when the world sort of came back online again, I kind of got stuck in that rut working from home, even though co-working spaces were reopening. And one day, and this actually happened previous to COVID, which led me into that co-working space, because I've been working from home for years. And I kind of said to myself, I have to get the F out of here. Like it just,
Mm.
the lack of socialization.
Yeah.
And so I knew about Kiln just from living in Boulder, came, took a tour, started working here, and it's really just been wonderful. I mean, the people here, the managers here, the events here, the networking. And I'm not just saying this because Kiln is interviewing me. I mean, really, I truly think this is a wonderful space. I just feel at home here, well taken care of, and man, they think of everything. During the holidays, sure, there's decorations and stuff, but I mean, decorating gingerbread cookies, like who thinks of and a gift wrapping station? I mean, like
Right.
thinking of stuff that I just like, wow, really. So I just, it's just been wonderful. And actually they invited me to do a, spotlight, and I actually did the whole talk on sharing my story about psychedelics.
Yeah.
And it was really well attended, helped me meet a lot of people. So, just the vibe here is great. The facility is great, and I'll stop there because it sounds like I'm, making an infomercial, but this is everything I'm saying.
feel
is
it,
100% genuine. So
100%.
Yeah.
Before we get into the rest of the episode, we want to thank the partners and sponsors who made the Kiln Road Trip possible. The Kiln Road Trip is brought to you by Kiln. Kiln is a boutique co-working and flex office community with 13 locations in 6 states across the West, dedicated to providing innovative workspaces that empower your team to thrive. Whether you're a solo visionary or an enterprise-level team of up to 100, Kiln transcends being merely a place to work. It's a hub for learning and connecting with like-minded professionals that will make you and your team love where you work.
And if you haven't stepped foot inside a kiln yet, you really need to. On this road trip, we visited every single location, and trust us when we say once you see these beautifully designed spaces, meet the talented team, and connect with fellow members, you won't want to work anywhere else.
Locations include Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, California, and Arizona. And they're growing too, with multiple locations set to open in 2024.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the kiln locations nearest you by booking a tour at kiln.com and answer Swell in the question, how did you hear about us? Once you complete the tour, you'll be entered into a competition where you could win a 1-year membership, their club membership at Kiln.
Yep, you heard that. That's kiln.com, book a tour, and be sure to mention Swell in the question, how did you hear about us?
The Kiln Road Trip is also brought to you by Moterra Camper Vans, a luxury camper van rental company for iconic road trips. Their top-of-the-line vans are available at 7 locations located near America's best outdoor adventure destinations. They have consistently earned the highest customer ratings in the industry, making Moterra camper vans your gateway to adventure without sacrificing on comfort or service.
That's true, and initially we wanted to take this journey in a 1960s VW bus, but thankfully we found Moterra instead. With 3 van options, we took the Pop Top Classic, which sleeps 4 and is best for those who want to maximize floor space and storage. This was critical for us because it needed to sleep the entire crew, we needed space to edit, and we were traveling with large amounts of equipment, luggage, and other goodies that we picked up along the way.
And this van took us through all 3,580 miles of the trip. Super comfortable and sweet to drive.
And actually, Moterra offers fully planned itineraries if you'd rather leave the planning to someone else.
Visit gomoterra.com/swell. That's gomoterra.com/swell.
This episode is also brought to you by Taurus. Taurus is leading the charge in home energy storage. Taurus makes it easy to achieve energy independence and a greener tomorrow. The Taurus station provides everything you need to generate clean power, efficiently store electricity, and easily manage your energy use.
And installing a Taurus station offers plenty of benefits, including save money on your electricity bill,
Also, ensure energy security with backup power during outages.
reduce carbon emissions with renewables,
You can also automate EV charging and HVAC systems with 100% renewables.
and enjoy unrivaled system monitoring and support.
If you like the sound of those benefits, get a quote to build your Taurus station in less than 30 seconds. Super easy at taurus.co. That's TORUS.co. Now, let's get back to the episode. What about Boulder? It seems like a lot of people who've come in here, it's a great place to live. And what is it about Boulder that kind of binds the community together that really, and also that you really find a lot of value in, and why it's home to you, I guess.
Yeah. So one interesting thing about Boulder is that a lot of people you meet, it's kind of a common saying, like, no one's from Boulder. Of course, there are people from Boulder, but a lot of people move to Boulder because they're wanting something that they didn't have at their previous home. And that's why we moved here. We just wanted a more open community, a more enlightened community. Obviously the natural beauty and hiking and skiing and the weather is great here. Those are kind of cliche things about Boulder, although they are true. But really along with all of that, we were just seeking a more, as I mentioned, open-minded, enlightened community where, just that wasn't so homogenous. Well, there is some homogenous pieces here in terms of, race and such, and that's kind of one of the downsides. It's there's not a lot of diversity here, and I came from New York where there's a ton of diversity. So that's one thing lacking. But in terms of just the kind of the mindset of the people that live here, it's very diverse and open, and just feels great to live here in that type of environment.
That's great. Well, I think we've got
the last question.
Yeah, last question to wrap things up. So thank you for this interview. But we like to ask everyone just to provide some feedback based on your experience to our audience about what does it take to create something that never existed before, something that would create a movement potentially.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it aligns well with a lot of the things that I shared. I mean, there is a movement happening in the psychedelic healing space. I certainly didn't create that movement, but I'm working hard, as I've shared, to embed myself in that movement. So, I mean, it starts with belief. It starts with belief and passion, really, because without that, you really can't have the motivation to keep going when problems arise, which they inevitably do, especially in the world I'm in now with misunderstandings about psychedelics, with legality around psychedelics, and also with accessibility to psychedelics. So that's a big issue, is accessibility, because a lot of these treatments and modalities are incredibly expensive, and I won't go down the rabbit hole on that. But it kind of comes back to your original question, is it all starts with that passion and purpose, because that's what you need to keep that drive to keep pushing forward and overcome challenges.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Kiln Road Trip. Be sure to follow along on the rest of the journey, and you can do that in two ways. One, subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or maybe even watching on YouTube, and follow along on all of our social media platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, at the Swell Pod. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.